This is the OTB Television Network.
Monterey Jazz find more. He comes for home with a 3-length lead, but he's getting tired. Heat Seekers coming at him. Go between. Student Council running on gamely. Awesome Gem late. Monterey Jazz is throwing in the towel. Heat Seeker the leader. Go between down the center, but it's Heat Seekers go between trying to get to him. Heat Seekers going on with it, and it's going to be Heat Seeker to win the Santa Anita Handicap. Go between second. Champs-Elysees came out of the clouds to be in a photo with Tiago for third, and Zappa was fifth.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. Along with my colleague Mike Veach, the racing columnist with the Saratoga, and I'm Mark Cassano, welcoming you to this morning's program, our first 90-minute show of the year as we stand just 8 weeks out from the Kentucky Derby, and a big day for three-year-olds, and we've got a trio of guests who will be joining us this morning who are hoping to enjoy a lot of success later on this afternoon. From New York, Mr. Rick Schosberg, whose undefeated Giant Moon will bid for the Gotham, and also from New York, Mr. Rick Violet, whose speedy Saratoga Russell will be looking for that same Gotham Glory. And quite a bit later on, in fact, toward the end of this morning's show, Mr. Barclay Tagg will join us. He's bringing back Tale of a Cotty for his 3-year-old debut in the Louisiana Derby, and I'll talk to Barclay about Elysium Fields as well. We've got a very deep 3-year-old segment this morning. The feature race is the Sham, but there were a trio of allowance races run last week at Gulfstream with strong Florida Derby implications. Michael will have another pedigree on the class of 2008. We will update our list of top Derby prospects, and we will look at the odds on Pool 2 of the Derby future. So all of that and much, much more if you stay with us for this 90-minute March 8th edition of Down the Stretch. Good morning, partner.
Good morning. How are you? Survive another tough week of winter, and pretty soon you'll be out of all this stuff. I have a question for you at the start of the show today. Okay. Today is one of my 5 favorite days of racing, the Louisiana Derby. Now, folks, we've been married for 16 years here on the show. I expect you can tell our audience my other 4 favorites.
Your favorite days of the year?
The Louisiana Derby is one of my favorite races. 5 favorite. Well, I have 4 others.
Wow, 4 others.
Well,
okay.
I mean, you know.
Alabama Day.
Okay, you got one.
It's got to be something at Woodbine,
well,
you know. 2
of them are in Canada.
Oh, Queen's Plate Day.
Okay.
You know.
All right.
Belmont Stakes Day?
You're there. What's the other one in Canada?
The other one in Canada. What else do they run other than the Queen's Plate?
6 times, done 3 shows from up there for this weekend.
The Canadian International
Yeah,
Day?
the Rothmans. Okay. You're sharp. You're ready for vacation.
That's what happens when you've been together 16 years. Okay, ready to go 90 minutes.
That's okay. That's okay. This will be interesting. Nice and loose.
I had to work out this week, so I make sure I can make it through 90 minutes. You know, story broke last night about Daher, who at the end of last year, and there's a shot of him winning the Cigar Mile, when he dominated Midnight Loot, he was one of the sharpest horses on the planet. Daher has now been retired due to torn ligaments in his right front ankle. It just goes to show you, folks, how fragile these horses are and how they can go off form so very quickly.
Well, at least we got to the bottom of the mystery because this was unbelievable, his 2 races back this year. And something of a, I don't use the word desperate when we're talking about Karen. He's too fine a man for that stuff like that. But hoping to get a mental edge coming back to New York, and the way he ran on the inner was just not altogether right. And we've gotten to the bottom of it. It's too bad. I wish him well. I think they priced him at $30,000, which is pretty interesting rather stiff price, just in my opinion, for the stud fee. But we found out what's wrong anyways. You know, I'm sorry we're going to miss him. I was looking forward to him being one of the aces in the handicap division this year.
And Miss Alleged, shown here rallying down the center of the Churchill Downs turf course en route to victory in the 1991 Breeders' Cup Turf, was euthanized at the age of 21. The champion turf filly that year, Miss Alleged suffered a ruptured artery after foaling a filly a day earlier. Miss Alleged is one of only 2 fillies, the other being Pebbles, to have won the Breeders' Cup Turf. I believe she beat It's All Greek to Me in Quest for Fame in a race that was run on a Saturday.
Absolutely right. A real good one in It's All Greek to Me. And interestingly, she went from there to win the Hollywood Turf Cup Invitational over males on the grass. And I went back to her PPs, and this surprised me. She was not a Group winner before she came here, Group 1 winner in Europe before she came here. And that brings to mind, Mark's often pointed out, you know, sometimes the level of class between the European turfers and ours. But that was quite a day there for her to win that race like that.
She was a fine filly. Very unusual story coming out of Gulfstream Park. Golden Velvet, shown here in the Darley Silks, on her way to dead heating for the win spot in Gulfstream's Sabin Handicap back in early January, was found to have competed in this race with a sponge in her nostrils. Now, sponging, obviously, you know, an illegal act, is when you take a piece of a sponge and place it in a horse's sinus cavity. Normally, that causes breathing problems. She didn't seem to have too many breathing problems this day.
How about that? And discovered several days later, actually, after the race. She's back in tomorrow in the Rampart Handicap.
Yes, she is. So it's going to be interesting to see how she runs back. All right, a couple of emails to read this morning. And Michael's got one concerning, well, the Breeders' Cup decision, you know, on moving around some of the races.
The well-discussed Breeders' Cup decision. I'm in a bit of a minority here on this. But anyways, to Mark and Mike, I have been a host to an online thoroughbred racing chat for 15 years on such sites as AOL and ABC Sports. During that time, I've not only heard the opinions of racing fans throughout the United States, but internationally on a weekly basis. Therefore, I don't know how anyone can ever think the recent changes to the Breeders' Cup event can be a result of listening to the fans. The series of decisions made in the past year regarding the Breeders' Cup event have been increasingly bad, but now the whole Philly Friday idea has reached the height of folly. The Breeders' Cup management should be acknowledged only for completely alienating the fans of racing. If anyone would like to voice their opinion on the changes to the Breeders' Cup marketing department, the email address is marketing@breederscup.com. And if anybody would like the opportunity to just discuss racing, the chat website is http://thelogin.bravepages.com/. As always, Mark and Mike, thank you for all you do for the fans of racing on a weekly basis all year, and thank you for your note.
Thank you. I have made a decision, and you can get upset with me if you like. I refuse to call the Breeders' Cup Distaff the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic.
Oh, well,
I don't care.
that's
refer to it
okay.
forever
That's
as
fine.
the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Steve wrote us about, and this was interesting, about some of the horses and some of the humans who have been nominated for the Hall of Fame a number of times, but have yet to get in. And Steve did some incredible work, and I want to show you a page which shows you some of the names who've been nominated 3 times and have yet to get into racing's Hall of Fame. And then I have a very important and logical question for my partner. As far, and folks, this is from 1998 to the present. Modern Male, Manila, and when we had Steve Davidowitz on the show, and he wrote the book, you know, The Best and Worst of Thoroughbred Racing, he felt Manila was the finest turf horse he had ever seen.
Oh, I have no argument. No argument.
Well, I had an argument. You know, I don't think he's better than Secretariat.
I think I'm with Steve
So
here.
I had an argument, but still, we all, realize that Manila
Right.
was absolutely
Right.
sensational.
Right.
Manila's been nominated 8 times without having gotten in.
Okay.
Best Pal nominated 4 times. In the modern female category, and for 16 years I have told you folks, this is the toughest category to get in. Sky Beauty's been nominated 6 times. Inside Information and Silver Bullet Day 4 times each. And the problem is, they're all on the ballot again this year. In the trainer category, Mel Studi has been nominated 5 times. Robert Wheeler, who's on the ballot this year, has been nominated 4 times. And in the jockey category, Eddie Maple and Randy Romero nominated 5 times each without having gotten in, and Alex Solis and Craig Perrette 3 times each without having gotten in. Now, here is my
That's fine, no.
very logical,
Yeah.
very straightforward question
Yeah.
to my partner,
Yeah.
who is on the nominating committee.
Yes.
Partner, explain to me how. Well, in this case, we'll take Mel Studi. Mel Studi's been nominated 5 times. In the trainer category this year, there are only 2 trainers on the ballot. You can have up to 4, ladies and gentlemen, so there's room for 2 more trainers. How does a trainer who's
Okay.
been nominated 5 times in the
Okay.
past in a category where there's room doesn't get nominated?
First, the direct answer to your question is there are 16 members of the committee. You need 9 votes to get to this place. And while I'm saying that to you, I'd like to tell our audience we want to make just a little technical word change here on this graphic. What we're really talking about here is finalist for the ballot as opposed to nominee, because at the start of the process there are maybe 60 or 70 nominees. So
Right,
to be fair to
finalists
the
on the
audience,
ballot.
a lot of people that you don't see there are nominated, but we're talking people who actually make the ballot that goes to the electric. To get on the ballot, you've got to pass muster of the 16 people I just said. So directly to answer your question, okay, those people we're talking about in whatever specific year didn't get the necessary 9. That's the answer to your question. It's
And-
9 of 16.
Yes, and while your answer is certainly very accurate,
Well,
I guess my feeling
Well-
is, how can, in Mel Studi's case
That's right.
and Eddie Maple's case, have been nominated 5 times each in the past, there is room on the ballot for another trainer and another jockey, and neither of them got enough support.
That's a fair question. We're talking about reading the minds of 16 people who put their mark on it in a spot. So,
Thank you very much
but
for
thank
that.
you, Steve,
And
for
Steve,
really your analysis,
I'll
because
tell
I
you what,
enjoyed it.
that's
really
a great
did.
job. And I only use the ones, obviously, you saw on the screen, the ones who have been finalists at least 3 years or more. But Steve, you did a fabulous job. Thank you very much. And for those of you who would like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch, here are the ways in which you can do that. Through the United States Postal Service Down the Stretch. Mark and Mike, Capital District OTB, 510 Smith, Schenectady 12305, or electronically. And please remember, if you're sending it electronically, everybody gets their mail here. Make sure our names appear. Viewer mail at capitalotb.com. And we are up to our first break on this morning's March 8th edition of the program. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, we will welcome in our first special guest of the morning, Mr. Rick Schosberg, who later this afternoon will send out the undefeated Giant Moon to his biggest test to date in the Gotham Stakes. As we go to this break, last week's feature race, the prestigious and historic Santa Anita Handicap. A field of 14, the 7-2 favorite was the speed, number 6 Monterey Jazz. The second choice, your boy, at 5-1. Now,
This needle is well received. I understand the sentiment. All I can say is Tiago later for you, buddy. That's all I can say.
Tiago was the second choice in here, and he certainly, as all the runners in here, they're going to have plenty of pace
You'll never
to run
get
at.
better chance, buddy.
So, we'll take a look at the big cap going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with Rick Schosberg right after these messages.
The big cap. And away they go to the roar of the Santa Anita crowd. Champs-Élysées began slowly, as did Tiago. As expected, Monterey Jazz straight off to the lead. Heat Seekers up in second. Student Council in the green colors. Go between in the red cap. On the outside is Air Commander. Zappa is tucked in right behind them. Medici Code in there too. Great Hunter gives them 7 length start. Then back to Big Booster, been followed by Seminole Native. Awesome Gem is back fourth last. Tiago is giving the lead a 12-length start. Celtic Dream in drop back second last, and Champs-Élysées is last. Past the 7/8 they go, and Monterey Jazz, he's doing what we thought he would. He's opening up very, very easily out here. He's just on a long rein. Russell Bays just took a long look back. Monterey Jazz goes clear by 7 onto the backstretch. Air Commanders in second, then Student Council, Heat Seeker, Medici Code. Go Between racing in the leading group, then Great Hunter, Zapper in the pink colours down at the rail. Here's Tiago, he's got to be 20 off that leader. Big Boosters in behind that, then Seminole Native, Awesome Gem on the far side. Champs-Élysées is second last, and Celtic Dreaming last of a very strung out field. Into the far turn they go into Santa in leader handicap. No turning back for Monterey Jazz. He's committed. He's still going nicely. Monterey Jazz by 9 as they come to the top of the lane. Air Commander's ridden after him. Then Student Council. Heat Seekers behind that. Then Go Between. Great Hunters, Zapper, Tiago and Awesome Gem are far, far back. Top of the lane. Russell Bays looks back again. Can Monterey Jazz find more? He comes for home with a 3-length lead, but he's getting tired. Heat Seekers coming in Go Between. Student Council running on gamely. Awesome Gem late. Monterey Jazz is throwing in the towel. Heat Seeker the leader. Go Between down the centre. But it's Heat Seekers. Go Between tries to get to him. Heat Seekers going on with it. And it's going to be Heat Seeker to win the Santa Anita handicap. Go Between second. Champs-Élysées came out of the clouds to be in a photo with Tiago for third. And Zappa was fifth.
This is the Off Track Betting Television Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Former Tiago fan Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark Casado, and the big cap goes to Heat Seeker for trainer Jerry Hollendorfer. And I think I'm right when I say this. That was Jerry's first big cap starter ever. Rafael Bejarano's had a fine winter in Southern California by 3/4 over Go Between. Champs-Élysées came from Pasadena to run third in the big cap. He photoed out Tiago for third. Now, to introduce this morning's first special guest, here's Michael.
And Mark, an audience on Down the Stretch this morning. Always a pleasure to have Rick Schosberg with us. A delight to talk with him. Very articulate trainer who really enjoys talking about situations like this. So Rick today will send out Giant Moon in the Grade 3 Gotham. And Rick Schosberg, if you are there, Mark and Mike, say hello.
How you doing, fellas? Good to talk to you guys again.
Good morning, Rick.
Very, very good, Rick. First thing I'd like to ask you about Giant Moon is you, and I remember this after the last start, you deliberately decided not to race in the month of February. What was your thinking there, Rick?
Well, you know what? We were kind of hoping that he could take us to that next level, and we're still hoping that that he can do that for us, and he'll hopefully this afternoon will be a step on the way. And my feeling is that he matured so much between the Damon Runyon and the Count Fleet mentally. He ran a much more professional race in the Count Fleet. The jock didn't have to ask him quite as hard to get him back into the race as early. And this time, Ramon really just had to shake him up just a little bit. If he came out of the bit, just had to change holds a little bit to get him to get up into the bridle and then relax again. Whereas the jock seemed to be working harder than the horse in the Damon Runyon and also the Sleepy Hollow when Kent rode him. And what we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, and that was basically to get him mentally caught up to where he was physically. And then we started thinking, well, if we really honestly want to make this Derby scene, and we want him to be peaking in May and the first week in June, why run the wheels off him in February when we can freshen him up and have him ready for the Gotham, and then maybe have him peaking at the right point in May, then just run him every 4 weeks going into it. And hopefully that'll work out for us, and we'll know a little bit more today.
Rick, if you would, tell our audience as of now what the weather's doing down there and what you're expecting to see this afternoon as far as track condition.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Track's going to be off. I mean,
Yeah.
I just have the video of Aqueduct right now. We did have quite a bit of rain last night, and right now we're kind of in between storms, as it were. They're expecting some serious weather later on this afternoon. I've been looking at the radar all morning, and it does appear that it's trying to work its way out east. And maybe, if we're lucky, it did last night a little bit. Suffolk County got hit a lot harder than Nassau, and I'm kind of hoping that it does keep tracking out that way, and then the western part of Long Island and Queens, where we're going to be racing, will get hit, less severely. But that being said, it could very possibly be 30-mile-an-hour winds and a couple inches of rain. So that's something to not look forward to, but hopefully the powers that be, when they move these post times up, maybe we'll miss a lot of this stuff. But right now it's just a sealed track.
Rick, we're going to right now take a look at the Count Fleet for Giant Moon, and described by you as a really professional maturation process event, if you will. A couple of questions coming out of the Count Fleet as our audience watches it. There's a lot of talk about today's race having some serious speed. It's definitely there. And you've been asked by other reporters about, can this guy rate? Are you likely to be placed in that position today? And will you be able to rate today?
Well, I think we've done everything we can in his training and his mental preparation for a situation like that. We've parked him in behind a group of horses a few times in his workouts to get him used to getting hit with dirt. Now, again, this is going to be a different situation, whether it's, he's getting mud thrown up in his face, or whether it's sometimes on a sealed track, there's a lot less kickback.
Okay.
But if the race shapes up that way, that's fine. And we've drawn very well.
Yeah.
You always want to draw inside on the inner track. And if that situation arises, and I know, there's some serious speed in the race, unless there's any scratches, and I'm going to leave that up to my rider. He's the leading rider around here. He's been getting to the winner's circle on a very, very regular basis, and he knows this horse. And we'll just kind of let the horse and rider make that decision.
Rick, we've seen his 4 races, and here on the show, and particularly with that event last year and the Sleepy Hollow and then the Damon Runyon. My question here is, in your mind, do you think Giant Moon is a guy who, up to this point, is doing just what he has to win, and does he leave you with the feeling that there might be a whole lot left if it's called upon?
Well, you know what? Both riders that have ridden him have come back to say exactly that.
Okay.
When Kent got off him the first time, he said, "Rick, there's a whole lot more to this horse than we're seeing right now." And even when he won the Sleepy Hollow and it was a 3-horse photo, his first words out of his mouth was, "We haven't gotten to the bottom of this horse yet, not even close." So, and Ramon the same way. The first time he rode him, it seemed like he was, you know, mentally he was just kind of going through the motions, the horse, and while the jock was going through very different motions to keep his interest. It seems that at least in the Count Fleet, Count Fleet, the horse was doing his running in a relaxed style, never really lost interest. It was a you know, a strong stretch run. It was a, you know, a good fight to the wire with Spanky Fishbein. He did it very professionally, and I'm hoping that he can improve off of that.
Rick, you've made it clear during this interview that you've got your sights on May, and outlined to our audience that was part of not racing the last several weeks. What do you have to see today from Giant Moon to really think about the next step forward?
Well, I mean, he's going to have a lot. He has a lot to deal with today. Besides, you know, letting us know that he deserves to go on to the Wood or the next level. You know, with regards to the track conditions, you know, that if he runs well over it, that's great. That's one more hurdle that we know that we can we don't have to worry about so much in the future. What could leave us with a question is if he doesn't run well over the racetrack, well, then you got, you know, you don't know why.
Yeah.
Was it the racetrack? Was it the company? You know. So what we need to see today, in order for us to go on to the next level in here, is a good, strong effort, unless, of course, he doesn't run well and the jock says, Rick, he just didn't handle it at all. Throw the race out. He's a good horse. Let's try this company again over a dry surface. So, you know, that being said, we're just going to have to see how it plays out. But I think a good, solid 1, 2, 3 finish in this race could springboard him forward.
Well, Rick, on behalf of our audience, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. And Mark and I say good luck this afternoon in the Gotham.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's always a welcome support team that you guys always send me.
Thank you, Rick.
Take care, Rick.
Okay, boys.
Rick Schasberg, ladies and gentlemen, and that's going to be fascinating with Giant Moon this afternoon. As you heard him say, a lot of rain overnight, sealed track at noon today. To get this straight with the 1 o'clock post, you will get all the updated changes from Aqueduct. All right, we'll continue with our 3-year-old segment and our feature race from the week past in Southern California at Santa Anita, the Sham Stakes. A field of only 5. You've just got to pay attention to 2 of them. Number 1 is El Gato Malo, the 7-10 betting favorite, undefeated in 3 starts coming in. Last win in the San Rafael back on January 12th. And number 6, Colonel John, the 3-2 second choice. Colonel John never worse than second in 4 prior starts, this being his first race since a second in the December 22nd Hollywood Cash Call Futurity. Now, as often is the case, when you have a small field, you have a rather unusual pace scenario. And that's exactly what you got in here, because you simply had no pace. 24-4, 50 seconds. The second quarter went 25-1. You know, they're going to pick it up after that, but you've got Colonel John stalking comfortably in second on the outside, number 6. You've got El Gato Malo right now 4th, sitting an in-behind trip on the fence. Colonel John had a tactical advantage over El Gato Malo in this setup, and partner, that was the difference simply in his half-length score.
I truly think that's right. I think that the ride by Gomez was the key to the victory here. Colonel John was a bit closer up than he normally is. Maybe that's part of the comebacking thing. You know, for me, El Gato Malo, and we're watching it right here, was just in a situation where he was kept waiting long enough to deny him the victory. That's my opinion. You never know how things are going to go out. An interesting contrast in styles. When they quicken, El Gato Malo, as we have seen him do all year, really, really quickens. Colonel John seems to me he has a bit more of a long and type of a fluid stride, if you will. I don't know if that means one is going to do better going longer than the other, but I think that the strategic thing going into the turn made the difference here. I think El Gato Malo might have been best this day. This race was run for the 8th time. Some pretty good horses have come out of it, Empire Maker and Giacomo. But I want to point out that the top 2 horses that we're looking at here now have a combined 9 starts, 0 on dirt.
Yes, and you know, we talked to both Owen Hardy, the trainer of the winner, and Craig Delasse, the trainer of El Gato Malo, and they both said that chances are their first starts on a regular dirt track will be on Derby Day. I would not do that if they were my horses, but after a dead half in 50 seconds, you see the pace picked up 24-1 the 3rd quarter, 24 flat the 4th quarter, and then a final furlong in 11-4. And as good as El Gato Malo ran when he was finally tipped out and had room, you're not going to make up any ground when Colonel John runs a final furlong in 11-4. You have no chance. So they both ran well. Colonel John had a better pace set up and a tactical advantage. They will both likely come back for the April 5th Santa Anita Derby. Now, it is pedigree profile time. And within this pedigree, you will watch him, and this is Colonel John we're speaking of, you'll watch him win the Real Quiet. You will watch him come from well off the pace to run 2nd in the Cash Call Futurity, and then you'll take one more look at the recent Sham Stakes. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael's look at the pedigree of the highly consistent Colonel John.
Good way to describe him. Bred and owned by Windstar Farm and trained by Owen. He's a son of Tiznow. And folks, as the time goes by, we're appreciating what he did in the Breeders' Cup more and more. It seems to me that it's only a matter of time until Tiznow sires a classic winner or a major winner at the classic distances. I know I have said this before, but Tiznow was, to my way of thinking, one of the least likely members of his stud crop of 2002 to make an immediate impact, but that is exactly what he has done. His first 2 crops each earned more than $3 million, and from his first have come Folklore, the champion juvenile filly off her Breeders' Cup score, Tough Tiz Sis, winner of the Grade 1 Lady Secret, and Bear Now, winner of the Grade 2 Cotillion. Additionally, Tiznow was the sire of graded stakes winners Slew's Tizzy and Tiz Wonderful, in addition to Colonel John, and the talented runners Slew's Tiz Now and Liquidity. Tiznow is a direct male line descendant of the immortal Man o' War through the line of Intentionally. He was a big, long-striding runner who personified the existence of Seattle Slew, Northern Dancer, and Relaunch in his own pedigree. And when you say this, you take it back to Man o' War's sire Fair Play, bred by August Belmont to the sire Hastings, whose courage and fire and hot temper, well known in his time, have undoubtedly carried on over all these generations to the aforementioned Intentionally, in reality, Honor and Glory, and Valid Appeal. And for Tiznow, as a full brother to Bud Royal and Tiz Bud, it is clear that he is no genetic fluke. Tiznow won the Breeders' Cup Classic twice, the Santa Anita Handicap, and the Super Derby, finishing off the board only once in 15 starts. Through last October, a total of 242 weanlings, yearlings, and 2-year-olds by Tiznow have been sold at auction. Are you ready for this, folks? For over 240 horses, the average for all of them is just under 130,000. People like this guy, like the type of horses he sires. In other words, these horsemen and bloodstock agents have not forgotten how beautifully and tenaciously Tiznow moved in the heat of battle against rivals such as Fusaishi Pegasus, Lemon Drop Kid, Albert the Great, Galileo, and Giant Causeway. Colonel John's mother, Sweet Damsel, is a daughter of Turcoman. So, this guy's father won the Breeders' Cup Classic, and his mother's father, a son of Aladar, won the Marlboro Cup at 1.25 miles and placed in the Breeders' Cup Classic to Proud Truth. I point this out because, according to Colonel John's paper, it is these top and foremost elements that must propel him to the Derby distance. Sweet Damsel is the mother of Colonel John's half-sister Carolyn's Gold, who placed in the Grade 3 Dogwood Breeders' Cup at 1.16 miles. Sweet Bill's grandmother, Fia, who placed in the Grade 1 Coaching Club American Oaks at 1.5 miles to champion Our Mims, and placed in the Grade 2 Diana Handicap at 1.8 miles to champion Weah. Fia's son, Paulus, was third in the Grade 3 Tropical Park Derby at 9 furlongs, while her daughter, Bautavista, is the mother of Imperialism, winner of the San Rafael Stakes at 1 mile, and second in the Santa Anita Derby at 1.8 miles. Imperialism was third in the Kentucky Derby to Smarty Jones. But it is perhaps worth noting that his sharpest victory may have been in the Grade 2 Pat O'Brien at 7 furlongs. His sister, White Beauty, won the Valley View Stakes at 1.16 miles on turf. We must now go back to 5th Dam Little Tweenie for another winner of any significance. It is her daughter, Night Shadow, winner of the Hawthorne Autumn Handicap at 1.16 miles, and who herself produced Shadow Star, winner of the Narragansett Governor's Cup at 9 furlongs, and Whirling Bat, winner of the Louisiana Derby, coincidentally enough today, at 9 furlongs. So Colonel John has a pedigree that is dotted with some major runners, but cannot be called rich. The elements of stamina are up close, through Tiznow and Turkoman. But overall, Colonel John would become the most distinguished member of his family if he wins a Classic this year.
So here's a look at the colt who will try to pull rank on them in 8 weeks in America's Greatest Race. I like that you talked about elements of his pedigree up close that can get him a route of ground, because I personally think up close is more important.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, I know you do. Yeah.
And hasn't, you know, and you're the first to admit, you'd never expected Tiznow
Mark,
to burst upon
I
the scene
honestly
like
did
this.
not.
This is a great thing with Tiznow.
It really is.
And Colonel John, the winner of the Sham and the Real Quiet, placed in the Cash Call Futurity, owned and bred by Windstar, trained by Owen Hardy, 9.75 on top for Tiznow, 9.10 on the bottom, for an overall rating of 9.425. Let's take a look at where that 9.425 stacks up. Just below Warpass and Court Vision, just above his rival El Gato Malo, who he beat in the Sham. There's an Aknakal, and there's poor Pyro. Michael,
Pyro.
thank you.
Okay.
Pedigree
Always
number
a lot of fun.
7 coming up on next week's show. Now, a trio of allowance races this past week at Gulfstream. And with the Gulfstream cards, as you know, dreadful as they have been, to get 3 good allowance races is a minor miracle. We're going to start last Sunday at Gulfstream with a very fine non-winners 2 other than at 1 1/8 miles with a field of 6. The 19-10 betting favorite, number 2 Alazo. I have been very, very high on this colt. 2 for 2 coming in. The 2-1 second choice, number 3 Hayburn. He caught the eye of a lot of people in his last start when he won off by 14.5. This race is a tale of 2 totally different performances.
Oh, man.
Alazo, after making a backside run, would literally stop, finish last, beaten 17.5, while Hayburn would win easily for the second straight time, this time by 6 lengths, and for him, I've got to think it's on to the Florida Derby.
I really do agree. I paid attention to this race during the week. I was very interested to see how Alazo would do, and boy, did he flatten out terribly. But the winner has strung together 2 extraordinarily strong performances, and I'm finding this fun and interesting if we ever get to his pedigree, because I'll tell you, at the first glance I gave, this is such a pedigree, it's unbelievable. He's by Put It Back, who's got Smokey Stover and In Summation out. His female family has the Bull Ruler winner, Rocky Marriage. There's just all kinds of speed in the first few generations here, but he seems to be a guy who just wants to take that speed as far as he wants to go, which right now is a long way heading into the Florida Derby. Mark, Alazo, what is up with that? Have you read anything since? I mean, that was really disappointing.
Because Kent's going to wrap up on him. I've
Oh,
got to
yeah,
think
yeah.
he got hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have the smoothest stride, but I've got to think he got hurt.
Yeah.
What I liked about Hayburn is
Oh, yeah.
this race looked like it had plenty of pace on paper, ended up not pace. Got a half mile in 50.
Yeah.
Now they ran the third quarter in 23 and 4.
Okay.
And Edgar and Hayburn made a run at the leaders because Edgar knows they're galloping up there.
Yeah.
Well, momentarily, the leaders ran away from Hayburn. But Hayburn just kept grinding. Edgar was very patient, grinding and grinding and grinding. And normally, when you get a third quarter spurt from the leaders like that, come from behind horses have a problem. This horse had no problem at all. Now, I know 152 and 3 is a slow time. I could care less. Eddie Plaza, this is one of the most dramatic turn around in form
That is true.
that I've seen in a long time.
Yep.
This horse, as a 2-year-old, had a blood disorder. And he had some kind of an infection, and it must have knocked him for a loop.
Okay.
Since they came back with him this year, he has been nothing short of sensational. Now, he is not an early nominee to the Kentucky Derby. I can't imagine why he's not going to be, you know, a supplemental or late
Sure
nominee
thing.
to the Triple
Sure
Crown.
thing.
But I've got to think, as long as he came out of that race well, it's on to the Florida Derby for Hayburn. They will need a new rider because the Florida Derby is the same day as the Dubai World Cup, and I think Edgar is going
Okay.
to Dubai. Now, another allowance race at Gulfstream. Last Saturday, an entry-level allowance race run at 9 furlongs. And sitting in 5th right now, in and among horses, in the black teal silks, is number 3, Nissel's Crunch. This is a very interesting colt. He's never been worse than 3rd in 5 starts going in here. And those 5 starts have come on synthetic, turf, and dirt. And he's coming off a solid 2nd behind a colt that I like very much. Helen Pitts used to have him face the Cat. Now he's in Todd Pletcher's barn. That was Nissel's Crunch dirt debut in last. And I'll tell you what, I like what I saw here. Jose Lescano sitting patiently in behind rivals, doesn't want to lose too much ground. He's 4th right now. He's going to tip him out, turning for home. And he's going to go on to a 2-length score. And folks, what I want you to watch is, in my opinion, he's got something in reserve here. So, partner, I know he wasn't beating an awful lot, but I like the way he did it.
By Van Nistelrooy, who's gotten the following among some trainers. I know John Kimmel spoke about him last year on this show. Another short family up front, a couple of Saratoga Juvenile Stakes winners here, but and the sire only raced at 2. But I happen to agree with Mark. There's a lot left here at the end of this race.
Yeah, Jose wasn't. He
No
wasn't
way.
asking him for an
No
awful
way.
lot. Last 5 furlongs in 103, last 3 8s in 38 and 3, final furlong in 13. You know, that equates pretty well to most of the 9 furlong races and the way they're run at Gulfstream. And now, I never thought I would be using this race this morning. Wednesday at Gulfstream, an off-the-turfer. It had poured early in the day. The main track was actually labeled, I'm almost certain, fast for this non-winners other than at 1 mile. And sitting in 2nd right now is number 9, Big Brown. Now, this is only his 2nd career start, and his 1st since jogging by 11 1/4 last September at Saratoga on the proper surface. Well, now it's a fast main track, and those are 2 totally different things. Hedge fund investors set the pace, but now Mr. DeSormo is going to let Big Brown do a little bit of running. And man, is he going to run. He's going to go on to a 12 3/4 length victory in 135 and 3.
Wow.
Rick Dutrow, who now trains him, despite the fact he's only run twice, and in spite of the fact that this is his dirt debut, you know, 2 for 2 by a total of 24 lengths, Rick Dutrow says it's on to the Florida Derby.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did read that, and I don't see how you can refuse. Looks like the big gun is not going to be in the Florida Derby. Of course, I'm referring to Warpass. That doesn't diminish the others in here, but this
galloping.
is really a huge gallop. He's by Boundary. We haven't heard too much lately of him. He's from a pretty good family. Couple generations back, we had Hidden Lake, the winner of the Gopher, wound up here in a number of Grade 1s. I think Hidden Lake was a champion, but I'm not positive. But she had several Grade 1 wins that year. But that was very, very impressive. What, you know, it's interesting me that Dutrow aggressively said, Florida Derby, here we come, after just 2. That's very interesting to me. So,
Yeah, I
and he
think-
knows horses,
Now,
you know.
this colt has had some foot problems. And originally, Rick was thinking, let's go to the bluegrass, the synthetic
okay, all right,
type of
okay,
track
all right.
might be helpful.
Okay.
But he said, you know what? He's been training here at Palm Meadows. We're going to leave him here. Now, I find this to be very interesting. He was ridden in that race by Kent DeSormo. And as I told you a few moments ago, the Florida Derby is the same day as the Dubai World Cup card. Kent DeSormo was scheduled to go to Dubai.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Kent DeSormo will now stick around
Oh, you're kidding.
to ride him
Is
in
he
the
gonna?
Florida Derby.
Wow.
Mike Solito, who is a very fine agent and happens to be Kent DeSormo's agent, said, and I quote, "Wherever Big Brown goes, Mr. DeSormo will go."
How about that?
End quote. This is a colt
How about
who's run twice. He's run once on
about
dirt.
that? Wow.
He's got foot problems. He's got no experience. Kent's going to cancel his trip to Dubai to ride him in the Florida Derby.
Yeah, yeah.
That may speak volumes about the potential for
know that.
Big Brown.
That is something.
So we'll keep an eye on him in case he does make it to the Florida Derby. All right. We are just 8 weeks out from America's Greatest Race. Now it's time to take a look at my partner's updated list of his top Derby prospects. Absolutely no surprise at the top. I mean, at the top, you know, you can almost bank on the fact that you're going to pick more past in 8 weeks.
Look, I mean, come on. I'm not hiding that at all. I mean, to me, he's in his own category, and I could, you know, almost pick anybody for the next 10 or 15. I think he's that good. He returned magnificently in his allowance. He's now headed for the Tampa Bay Derby next week. Classic speed on top, stoutness in the bottom breeding, family that produced Coastal and Slew of Gold. It's on to the next step. Pyro, fascinated by the Derby today. We should learn more about what was, I call, a glittering victory in the Risen Star. He's facing better company. He has the advantage of recency. We'll wonder at the end of this day if he's still chasing Warpath. Court Vision, I'm one of the people who thought that he really did well in the Fountain of Youth. I thought that Billy set that up for him to move forward for whatever his next race is. I think he wants a 1.25 miles. Colonel John, Mark took the words out of my mouth earlier. This is just a steady customer. He had a tactical advantage last week in the Sham. Still, it must be said, whatever you want to say, he did return a winner over a guy that we know has quality, El Gato Malo, and I've got him up close in number 5. Don't think he lost any stature there at all last week. This is an honest runner. Elysium Fields joins my list this week, and I'm calling him as El Gato Malo is to Colonel John in the Risen Star. This colt is to Cool Coleman in the Fountain of Youth. I think he and Ibar were a bit surprised on the turn as he got running strong again in the deep stretch. This is a racy-looking runner who looks like he wants to go 1.25 miles. And again, as with El Gato Malo last week, in my heart, I thought Elysium might have been best in the Fountain of Youth. Majestic Warrior, I've kept him here. Today's a very important day. I've thought about him picking this spot for his return, the Louisiana Derby. I will point out he was ready to go for his debut at Saratoga. That may mean something, but I must admit, as much a fan as I am with Bill, and I know Bill thinks very, very highly of this guy. He said it to me personally after the debut. This is one rough spot for a return. When Mark and I spoke earlier in the week, Mark pointed out that, you know, look, we've got no room for error here. There's probably only one start left. If he's this good, this is going to be exciting this afternoon. Z Fortune, folks, I just like this guy. He's a New York bred. I think he's a good-looking specimen. I think he just lumbered to another good race against Pyro. Cool Coleman in the 9th spot. Got the jump on my guy in the Fountain of Youth. Next race for him, I don't know, but he's a brilliant son of the brilliant mine chef. I think he's backed off the Florida Derby, has he not?
Yes, I think he's going to go
type
bluegrass,
thinking.
yeah.
And number 10, Dennis of Cork joins my roster. If there's a sneaky guy in this 10, for me it's this guy. He's in the Arkansas route to the Derby. 3 starts, 3 tracks, 3 wins, closing powerful punch. I turn it over to Mark.
I'm a little frightened because in a moment when you take a look at my list, we are going to have in our top 10, 9 the same runners.
That is pretty scary.
Yeah,
Believe
believe
me,
me,
that's
it's
awful.
really frightening.
That's awful.
The
We'll never
only-
make it to 20.
No, the only difference is you have Majestic Warrior 7.
Okay.
I, in a moment, when you see my list, will have him 11. And I'll
aye.
tell you why, and it's the same thing for Tale of Akati. I'm not quite as high. It's not like I don't like him, but I'm not quite as high as most folks on Majestic Warrior and Tale of Akati for the Derby for this reason. When you make your 3-year-old debut on March 8th, only 8 weeks in front of the Kentucky Derby, you're only going to have 2 prep races for the Derby. I personally like horses to have 3 or more. So that's why I'm not quite as high on Majestic
enough.
Warrior and Tale of
Fair
Akati.
enough, yeah.
But we have 9
Wow.
of the top 10 exactly the same. And I have Majestic Warrior at number 11. Let's take a look. They're in almost the same. I've got a tie at the top. I'll tell you what. I think right now they've separated themselves a bit from the rest of the group.
I do too.
But I'm with you. I thought Court Vision's debut in the Fountain of Youth was pretty good. Here's the problem. Billy, meaning Billy Mott, has got to figure out a way to get 2 more preps into Court Vision, not just 1 more. He needs
I think he's a
2
horse who needs
more
racing.
races.
I do. Yeah, I do.
So he's a Hall of Famer. You know, he's got to work that out. I'll put a call into him. He's got to work that out. Colonel John and El Gato Malo are 4-5. I've liked Dennis of Cork since the first time I laid eyes on him. He's a pretty serious racehorse next Saturday in the Rebel. I think Elysium Fields ran just a little bit better than Cool Coalman did, despite the fact he got beat in the Fountain of Youth. I've got Z Fortune right there too, and I can't wait for next Saturday's Rebel because you got Dennis of Cork and Z Fortune. That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Cool Coalman has benefited this winter at Gulfstream by having run 2 9-furlong races and having drawn the inside post both times.
Okay, all right.
That is
okay.
gigantic.
That's it.
Let me put it this way, and this is no knock on Cool Coalman. Instead of having drawn post 1 both times, if he had drawn post 8 both times, forget about
I
it.
think you're right.
This is the only difference we have in our top 10. Georgie Boy has never gone 2 turns, but the way he won his last start in the San Vicente really picked my head up, I'll tell you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And if
Yeah.
he goes in next Saturday's San Felipe, we will do everything we can to bring you his trainer, Kathy Walsh, who we've never had on the show. But Georgie Boy could make a major impression in his 2-turn debut next Saturday. There's Majestic Warrior, Tale of Akati, and Yankee Bravo.
Yeah.
The next 3 are all going this afternoon in the Louisiana Derby. And I find the most fascinating decision to be from Yankee Bravo. Because, folks, he could have stayed in Northern California and run in the El Camino Real Derby, which is run on dirt. Instead, he ships to Louisiana to face a terrific group.
Oh, this is a tough bunch.
So Patty Gallagher, his trainer, must think pretty highly of Yankee Bravo because I'll tell you what, he would have been really tough to beat in the El Camino Real.
Yep.
There's Face the Cat. I have 0 idea what Todd is thinking about him, but he's really talented. Fierce Wind has never been beaten going around 2 turns. Fierce Wind will likely come to the Florida Derby. There's Hey Burn from Eddie Plaza. Giant Moon goes this afternoon in the Gotham. Manba and Anak Nakal both ran, awful in the Fountain of Youth. Atoned will likely make his 3-year-old debut next Saturday in the Tampa Bay Derby.
Okay.
Now, you would think that's a pretty decent place to make a 3-year-old debut, but when that monster Warpass is going there, I'm not sure that's a great place to debut. Saratoga Russell makes his 2-turn debut in the Gotham, and in just a few moments, Rick Violet, his trainer, will join us. Blackberry Road goes in the Louisiana Derby this afternoon, and there's Big Brown and Nissel's Crunch, 2 of the impressive Gulfstream allowance winners. So there's my look as of March 8th, 56 days in front of America's Greatest Race, and we have in our top 10, 9 of the same horses. The Pool 2 of the Kentucky Derby Futures is ongoing. It will continue until 6 o'clock Sunday night. Let's show you the group of horses. I'll give you the in fact, you're going to see the updated odds. Pat Peretta did a very nice job updating this page. Folks, there's only about 72,000 in the pool. So these odds are going to change dramatically. And partner, when you consider you've got the Louisiana Derby, which features any number of these horses, plus the Gotham, you know, you got to be semi-insane to bet before you see those races. I mean, it doesn't give you any advantage. The favorite right now, and it's no surprise, is your number 1, my co-number 1. Warpass is 3.5 to 1. The second choice right now is all other 3-year-olds. The third choice, and the only other horse in single digits, is your number 2, my co-number 1, Pyro. The horse that is going to be, in my opinion, more dramatically lower in Pool 2 than Pool 1 of any horse is Dennis of Cork. You needed to get him in Pool 1. He was 46 to 1 in Pool 1 because a lot of people, you know, didn't know about him. You knew about him because, you know, you saw him on this show. But Dennis of Cork, who was 46 to 1 in Pool 1, is 11. That's not good.
No.
So, you know,
I know that.
You know, there's a bunch of sprinters in here. Bob Blackjack is 51. Gallego is 99. JBK, 32, makes his 2-turn debut this afternoon in Louisiana Derby. But there's a look. Again, you have until tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock to make future wager in Pool number 2. All right. And we are up to our second break on this morning's March 8th edition of Down the Stretch. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, our second special guest, Mr. Rick Violet, will join us. As we go to this break, the Devona Dale for 3-year-old fillies. Game Face, the odds-on favorite. B Sharp Sonata, the second choice. So we'll take a look at the Devona Dale going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with Rick Violet right after these messages.
They're racing in the Devona Dale. American County had the best beginning. Robbie's Gal on the outside is away well. Jay-Z Warrior taken in hand right behind them and a little bit rank early. Then it's Game Face running along in 4th position on the outside. Informed Decision and B Sharp Sonata are in the back but not far behind as they leave the chute. It's Long Shot, Robbie's Gal, and American County through a quarter in 22 4/5 seconds. It's 2.5 back to Jay-Z Warrior trying to settle down in 3rd, then B Sharp Sonata. Informed Decision and Game Face, and they're all bunched in the back. The whole field is separated by 3.5 lengths as Robbie's Gal and American County lead the way to the half-mile pole. They're 2 lengths clear of B Sharp Sonata, who's now into 3rd after a half that went in 45 1. Then Jay-Z Warrior, Game Face, and the trailer is Informed Decision, and Robbie's Gal, Long Shot under Jorge Chavez, is opened up 2.5. Game Face makes the first move now and is up running in 2nd. Then Jay-Z Warrior in 3rd. B Sharp Sonata comes off the rail. American County drops back, and then Informed Decision. They're coming to the top of the stretch, 3/4 in 110 flat, and it is still Robbie's Gal, and Game Face is a length and a half behind. B Sharp Sonata is making her run, and here she comes between horses. B Sharp Sonata with a rush storms to the front inside the final furlong, leaving Robbie's Gal and Game Face behind. It is B Sharp Sonata to win the Devona Dale. It was Game Face 2nd, then Robbie's Gal and Informed Decision.
This is the OTV Television Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark Asano. The Devona Dale goes to B Sharp Sonata. 4 in a row for this very nice filly with a come-from-behind 2-length victory in spite of being caught in behind dead fillies on the turn. As soon as Eric Camacho got her out, she exploded. She's won 4 in a row. In fact, she probably would have won 6 in a row, but young Mr. Camacho made a mistake in the epitome at Monmouth 5 starts back. This filly is awfully good right now. Tim Salzman has done an outstanding job with her. Now, to introduce our second guest of the morning, here's Michael.
And Mark and audience, as we continue our coverage of today's Gotham Stakes for you, it's a real pleasure to have back with us Rick Violet, who's going to send out Saratoga Russell, a very fascinating entrant in this edition of the Gotham. Earlier in this show, we talked to Rick Schosberg, just so Rick Violet knows, and he's got that nice striding sort of lumbering giant Moon. Rick, by contrast, has somebody that can really run fast in Saratoga Russell. So, Rick, if you're there, Mark and Mike say hello this morning.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Morning, Rick.
I just want to preface all of this by saying that Saratoga has nothing to worry about.
Well, wait, that's coming at the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're glad to hear that, though.
How are you guys? Right?
Very, very well, Rick. It is a pleasure. Let's talk about Saratoga Russell, and we have followed him. We have one of the correspondents to this show is a member of the group that owns him, and so we've watched all 3. And Rick, my first question, it does seem to me that this is a guy that learned an awful lot and quickly from his first start to his second. So I'm going to ask you, as you brought him to the races last fall, did he indicate to you that kind of talent as you prepared him?
No, to be honest with you, the speed came as a bit of a surprise. He's a big, lanky. He doesn't look really anything like most trippies look. He's definitely the theatrical comes out from the mare. And he's kind of a big-headed, little bit coarse, nice frame, you know, but leggy. Wants to be a little light, and certainly looks like something that wants to go 2 turns. He had some shin issues over the summer, so we had to be a little bit delicate sometimes training him. And for his first start, actually, I would have liked to have gone to the gate one other time and jumped him out of there, but I really didn't want to stir up his shins. And breaking from the gate a lot of times does you in. So, so we didn't go back to the gate, and then when we drew the 1 hole, actually he broke better than I thought he would. So, but then when he rushed up there and went 21 and change and 44 and change, I wasn't sure where that came from. So we liked him. I didn't know how brilliant that he was going to be this brilliant, to be honest with you.
That's really interesting that you would say that. In my career, there's been one other horse who I asked that type of question, and I do want to share with you in the audience the trainer I asked it of. We all, I'm sure, remember the super quick Kelly Kipp, and I believe Alan Jerkins had him. He said the same thing. He said, until he raced, I never saw that. And he had 106s and 107s everywhere.
Exactly. He ran him for 50,000, I believe.
Yeah, I think there you go. You've answered my second question, Rick. You're getting so good at this. So we're going to go we're going to go right now to question number 3. And when the guys downstairs can rack it up, we're going to take a look at your return at Gulfstream Park. Very wet, sloppy day on February 9th, and as soon as we get it up, I jump the gun on the guys downstairs. When we get to see it, it's clearly a 1-horse race. 2 months off, so I'll have a couple of questions when we do get to see the race, Rick. First off, talk about this as a return, then I have a couple of follow-up questions, and here we go. We're seeing it now, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're seeing it now. Yeah, I mean, you know, he had gotten ill down there. He had a stomach issue, was squirting the walls and the temperature and what. So we lost a couple of weeks of training. This race presented itself. It was actually for Florida breds, and he was not 100% going into this race as far as fitness was concerned. So if he was going to be vulnerable, it was that day. The slop came up, the speed scratched out of the race. We ended up on the fence again. And we kind of went to plan B. I really was going to take a hold of him that day and put him back behind horses again. But we needed to move things forward. And so the logistics changed, and we basically, just got the job done, won the race. You obviously handled the slop, and now we're presented with a kind of a similar situation today. Originally, I was planning on taking a bit of a hold of him again, going into the first turn. We're obviously going to have a wet racetrack, which he's shown an affinity for. We look like we're the speed of the race, and I think we just might, get away clean and dictate things again.
I think that's the expectations. You're finally getting your chance to go 2 turns. If the theatrical part comes out, we think there's going to be no problem. In your heart, is he ready to go 2 turns in graded company?
Well, I mean, I would love to have had an allowance race around 2 turns, but the fact of the matter is there are no graded stake winners in the race, I believe. There might there are a couple of stake winners, but so it's a decent step up without having to hook the Bears, and there'll be a couple of nice horses that come out of this race, no question, and they're the ones that move forward today. So while on paper it looks like a really huge leap, a lot of us are in the same boat trying to find out where we belong in the 3-year-old picture, and time is kind of running out. So we need to lead them over there and see what men arrive today, and the little boys might have to go to a different route and wait till they grow up a little bit too. So
there's graded money on the line today. That's always important, particularly a fellow in his situation. But was the fact that he ran good on the inner last fall part of your thinking here?
A little bit. Unfortunately, Gulfstream takes themselves out of the equation because their 2-turn races, 1 1/8, and coming off 3/4 races, that's just not always the right thing to do unless you're really convinced that you almost have to go 2 turns. So when you're still kind of trying to scope things out, that's not the best thing. You can even win and run huge, but the 1 1/8 can get to the bottom of you, and you take 1 step forward and 8 steps backward. So we were looking at Oaklawn, which is next week. We kind of liked that this was 4 weeks since the last race. It'll be 4 weeks to the Wood and 4 weeks to the Derby. The Louisiana Derby is coming up the toughest of all the races, of all the preps so far. So this, there were a lot of reasons that were, you didn't have to really read between any lines. You obviously ran well over the racetrack. The slop it shouldn't be a factor. And the distance is, exactly what we're looking for. So for a lot of reasons, we're here.
Well, Rick, I'm going to turn you over to Mark now. Good to speak with you again.
Good to speak with you. Take care.
Good morning, Rick. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
Good. I'm going to ask you to change hats here for a moment. We're going to talk briefly. You as president of the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association, I have 2 questions for you on the new franchise. First, your thoughts specifically on the New York Racing Association running racing for the next quarter century.
Well, it's not a surprise. I think for a good part of the last year, we knew NYRA was going to be the entity. Exactly in what shape or form, or where the details needed to be handed out. There are a lot of things to like about a not-for-profit going forward, and and they're the players. So we need. There's still a lot of work to do. The legislature needs to get together and select a provider, a VLT operator and a land developer, and until they do that, and until the hammers and nails start flying, still kind of treading water. We need construction to get going as soon as possible, and so that we can see some of the fruits of the VLT revenue down the road. And not just us, NYRA needs that revenue as well, because while they're going to be helped along in their bankruptcy proceedings, they still need substantial income. We have a lot of capital improvements and dormitory issues and racetrack issues that need to be settled. There's a lot of money that's needed on the backside. So the sooner we get an operator in place and get the construction up and going, I think everybody will feel better. We've got a good piece behind us, but there's still a long way to go.
Rick, do you feel confident that you can work hand in hand and create a good business relationship with the New York Racing Association?
Yeah, why not? I mean, it's a little bit like labor and management. There are going to be issues that you just basically going to disagree on, and people do that every day. There doesn't have to be any animosity or venom. That's just business. You go in, and you know there are issues that you can pretty much agree on. You know, there's a gray area where there's some issues that you can kind of work your way through, and then there are probably issues that it's going to be black and white, and you're going to need a gun to your head to agree on. But that's business. People deal with it every day, and the world doesn't end. So there's no reason. I think both sides want the best racing possible for New York, and to maintain its status as the best racing in the world. And it's a legitimate and achievable goal. So there is no problem moving forward.
And finally, Rick, your feelings on how the Horsemen made out with the new franchise agreement, and in particular, the percentages of the VLT revenue.
Well, actually, we the end of the day, and I hate that expression, but we did pretty well. Not as well as we had hoped. The original agreement with MGM and NYRA was, we ended up at 10% of the net revenue. We end up now with 7.5%. The original MOU had us at 6.5 with a cap on it, and the cap was actually very punitive, as if things really took off, our retention rate actually went down, and it could have gone into the toilet. So getting the cap off was certainly something that was a first goal, and really thanks to Senator Bruno. He got beat up a lot, and I think unjustifiably in Saratoga. From day one, he was in the Horsemen's camp, trying to protect the revenue stream, and he was steadfast, and we actually got a point more than I thought we were going to get when everything was hammered out. So, it was a time we were looking at 4.9% with benchmarks to be met to even get that. So it was a lot of stress and a lot of I don't want to say sleepless nights, but in both ears, so to speak, certainly for the last few weeks of the negotiations. And it's certainly a good start. It's revenue that the Horsemen really need, and it took some serious convincing. The question that the budget office kept asking was, you guys already have the highest purses in the country. Why do you need more money? And I think the owners need to, if they're talking to any politician, convince them that 90% of owners in this business do lose money. So we needed to bridge that gap, and this was certainly a good start.
Well, terrific. Congratulations on that, Rick, and congratulations with all the success thus far with Saratoga Russell, and all the best later this afternoon as you stretch him out to 2 turns in the Gotham.
Thank Thanks a lot, guys. Good talking.
Good luck today, Rick.
Violet,
Absolutely.
ladies and gentlemen, and Saratoga Russell, as you heard him say, likely to be sent out of there by Abar Koa with the conditions the way they will likely be, and he may be the controlling speed in this afternoon's Gotham. And we are up to our final break on this morning's March 8th edition of Down the Stretch. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, we will welcome in our final guest of the morning, Mr. Barclay Tagg, who later this afternoon will send out Tale of a Cotty in the Louisiana Derby for his 3-year-old debut. As we go to this break, on the Big Cap undercard, they ran the Kilroe Mile, and of course 1 mile on the proper surface. Over the same turf course, which they will run the Breeders' Cup Mile. And I'll tell you what, I thought we were going to see a big, big performance in here, and I was right. The only problem was I thought the big, big performance would come from number 1, Warmonger, who I thought, you know, was just sitting on a monster. Well, somebody else was. So we'll take a look at the Kilroe Mile going to the break. Michael and I will be back with Barclay Tagg right after these messages.
Then 5 lengths from first to last. They go past the 5/8 pole, and it's still Storm Military showing the way. Ever a Friend is in second. Warmonger still tugging at the bit down at the rail. Out of Control is up alongside of him. Mr. Napatandy and Artiste Royal 4 lengths off these leaders. No change the whole way down the backstretch. They've got 3/8 to go now, and it's still Storm Military kicking on for home. Ever a Friend's been second throughout. Warmongers threatened to run a big one. Now, can he live up to it? He's got 2.5 to make up. Out of control on the outside then, Mr. Napatandy and Artiste Royal. Top of the lane, Ever a Friend takes on Storm Military. Out of control down the centre. Warmonger is now asked to go on with it, but suddenly has to pick it up down at the rail, and Ever a Friend has burst away. And look at this, Ever a Friend absolutely in full flight through the lane. Ever a Friend, a very stylish winner of the Frankie Kilroe. Artiste Royale ran on second, Warmonger third, and then close Out of Control and Storm Military for fourth.
This is the OTB Television Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left, I'm Mark Asano. The Kilroe Mile goes to Ever a Friend for Mike Mitchell and Tyler Bays. Prior to being claimed for 62 by Mike Mitchell, Ever a Friend had been 1 for 11. He was pretty easy to beat in turf sprints. He was huge, winning the Kilroe by 3 3/4. If the teletimer was accurate, I mean, I've got to put that word if in there.
Yeah.
If it was accurate, ran the last half mile in 45 4, and the last quarter in 22 3. I have no idea where it came from. Warmonger checked in a mediocre third. All right, final guest this morning has got Tale of Acadi making his 3-year-old debut later this afternoon in the Louisiana Derby. As I told you earlier, case of Tale of Acadi as well as Majestic Warrior. This will be likely one of only 2 pre-Kentucky Derby starts as a 3-year-old. He also has Elysium Fields pointed for the Florida Derby. Yesterday, I had a chance to sit down and chat with Mr. Barclay Tagg. Barclay, Tale of Acadi is making his 3-year-old debut on March 8th. Why the late start?
I had a couple of little minor setbacks with him. There's nothing, no big problem or anything like that. But I didn't get him back from his layoff as quickly as I was hoping to, and it just put me off a little bit. And then also we didn't have the Holy Bull for a prep to point to, so I didn't rush him too much right then anyway. And this was the first race that I could sensibly come up to with him.
So although you're stabled in Florida, was it a situation where the Louisiana Derby simply fit into your schedule?
Well, 2 things was we had him at Gulfstream for the early part of the winter, and we just thought he didn't seem to like that track. He kind of kept getting jammed up on it. And it's actually a very nice track, but it just didn't seem to suit him. And I put him up at Palm Meadows, where it's basically the same texture track, but it's a little bit deeper, and he seemed to relish that. So I continued his training up there with my division up there, and but all in all, the whole thing just set me back just a little bit. So this race made more sense to if we're going to try and get him to the to start with this race.
Barkley, today's race is 8 weeks out from the Kentucky Derby, meaning that if everything goes well and according to plan, it appears likely that Tale of Hecate would only have 2 races as a 3-year-old prior to the first Saturday in May. Is that a concern for you?
No, not really. He trains very well. He's had experience as a 2-year-old. He's been accomplished as a 2-year-old, and you know, he had a later race in the Breeders' Cup there, and I don't think it'll be a problem at all if he runs well in this race, and then I can get him back in the wood, and he has a good race there. Why, he ought to be well prepared for it.
Barkley, the last time we saw Tale of Hecate on the racetrack was the aforementioned Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Finished a distant 4th, beaten 17.5. But was that race a throwout because of track condition?
Well, I hope so. I mean, it was a horrible track, and he didn't seem to like it. And unfortunately, it's raining here at the fairgrounds, too, on Friday, so I don't know what it'll be like tomorrow. But anyway, we're here. We're going to go for it. He's doing well. He feels good. He's happy and healthy, and we're going to go for it, see what happens.
Barkley, how has he changed mentally, physically, from 2 to 3?
Well, he's a lot more mature than he was. He was a little bit slow maturing, I thought, but he was able to handle some good racing. But I just thought he was immature. Just looking at him, he looked like an immature horse. He's rounded out much better now and filled out and strong and full of himself. So I feel good about everything about him. I mean, sure, I'd like to have had another race in him, but I don't think it'll matter. And sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. So he should be nice and fresh. If he makes it to the Kentucky Derby, he should be nice and fresh for it, and have a couple of good races under his belt. So that's all I'm concerned with.
Barkley, what do you expect from Tale of Hecate in this afternoon's Louisiana Derby? What does he need to get out of the race?
Well, he needs to get a good race out of it, but I don't want to knock him out either. But naturally, I'd like to see him win it. But, you know, if he can be first, second, third and run a good race, not be beaten too far, or if he can win it, why, I would feel very, very happy, of course. And it would have me right where I want him.
Barkley, before I let you go, let's talk about another outstanding 3-year-old in your barn. That's Elysium Fields, a bang-up second in the recent Fountain of Youth, coming off a maiden win. Talk about this performance, if you would, please.
Well, we liked him from the very beginning, and I ran him down at Laurel a couple of times, and he didn't run badly, but he didn't win either. And then I brought him to, you know, down to Florida and ran him over at Calder one time, and he third over there. So I thought, well, that's enough of this foolishness. I know he's better than that, so I put blinkers on him. And then he ran very well. He won his maiden race really easily. And I thought he'd run very well in the Fountain of Youth, and he did. So.
Barkley, has it been the blinkers that have made the difference, or is it a situation where he's just beginning to mature at this point?
Well, I think he's beginning to mature. I hate to rush blinkers onto a horse, but, you know, if they've shown some talent and they're starting, and you think they're a classic quality type of horse, well, you can't wait forever or the classic will be over, you know. So I had to do something to get him focused a little more and see if I could make him grow up a little faster, and it seemed to work. So,
Barkley, how did Elysium Fields come out of the Fountain of Youth, and what's next for him?
He came out of it great, and I'm going to run him back in the Florida Derby.
Well, Barkley, as always, we appreciate your time. Our audience always enjoys hearing from you. Best of luck with Elysium Fields in the upcoming Florida Derby, and of course, all the best with Tale of Hecate later this afternoon in the Louisiana Derby.
Thank you, Mark.
Barkley Tagg, ladies and gentlemen, the conditioner of Tale of Hecate and Elysium Fields. And it will be nice to see Tale of Hecate come back later this afternoon, along with the comeback of Majestic Warrior in the Louisiana Derby. All right, time to thank all the folks who helped get this week's show, our first 90-minute program of the year, on the air. Dan Hayes directed, Pat Peretin, Pete Persico, and Kurt Fleck, our associate producer, Julie Hoxie, and special thanks to this morning's trio of guests, a pair of Ricks, Schosberg and Violet, as well as Mr. Barkley Tagg. Wonderful day of racing.
It is.
Wonderful card
Yep.
at the fairgrounds. But the Louisiana Derby and the Gotham, both fascinating races. One thing I want you to pay attention to tomorrow, the Santa Margarita at Santa Anita. Neshoba's Key for Carla Gaines goes back, I have to catch myself, I keep wanting to say dirt, goes back to the main track, but the key here is, will John Sheriffs run the filly I love, Zenyatta? She missed training time. She's not 100%.
He's not talking about it as any reason,
So pay attention if Zenyatta runs in the Santa Margarita. Next week, we're going to have some fun because it's another big Saturday for the 3-year-olds. Warpass in the Tampa Bay Derby. We've got the Rebel with Dennis of Cork and Z Fortune. And we've got the San Felipe and the stretch out of Georgie Boy. So it should be a fun Saturday.
Some changes coming to the Derby list, maybe.
Maybe. We'll see. Have a good weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you so very much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. Coming up in just a moment is AM Gulfstream. Have a wonderful weekend and a terrific upcoming week. Michael and I will see you next week.